July 24, 1943. Radar station Himmelbett, Eisbär, outside Hamburg, Germany. Oberfunker Klaus Hartmann stared in disbelief at his Würzburg radar screen, his hand frozen above the range adjustment knob as the cathode ray tube bloomed into a solid wall of echoes. The display, normally sharp and disciplined, was now a chaotic mass of false targets, hundreds, perhaps thousands, each return appearing as a legitimate bomber formation. It looked like the entire Royal Air Force was attacking Hamburg, more aircraft than even existed. His training told him it was equipment failure, but his instincts whispered something darker. This was deliberate. Across the German air defense network, confusion erupted. Fighter controllers vectored night fighters toward phantoms that vanished on approach, while anti-aircraft guns fired at illusions and radar-guided searchlights swept madly across an empty sky. What no one at Himmelbett, Eisbär, yet understood was that this night marked the dawn of a new and invisible kind of warfare, an electromagnetic war that Germany was already losing before it had begun. For 4 years, Germany had enjoyed radar supremacy. Since 1939, its Telefunken-built Freya early warning systems and Würzburg gun-laying radars had formed the backbone of the Luftwaffe's air defense network. The Kammhuber line, named for General Joseph Kammhuber, stretched from Norway to France, an overlapping lattice of radar boxes, each pairing a ground control station with a night fighter equipped with Liechtenstein radar. It turned nocturnal air defense into a science, transforming the chaos of darkness into calculated interception. British bombers, once shielded by night, were hunted and destroyed with terrifying precision. Men like Feldwebel Ernst Simon, a radar operator with the 4th Night Fighter Division, remembered that period with pride. "We guided our fighters as shepherds guide their dogs." The British flew in darkness, but to us, they were illuminated like stars. That illusion of invulnerability shattered on July 24, 1943, the Würzburg radar represented the peak of German electronics engineering, operating on a wavelength of 53 centimeters. It could detect aircraft with a precision that bordered on miraculous. It guided the flak towers and night fighters that exacted heavy tolls on Allied bombers. So heavy, in fact, that Bomber Command's Arthur Harris feared Britain would lose its trained crews before Germany ran out of cities. Yet even as German engineers perfected their radars, British and American scientists were quietly preparing to blind them. At the Telecommunications Research Establishment, TRE, in Malvern and Harvard's Radio Research Laboratory in Massachusetts, teams had been developing countermeasures under extreme secrecy. The breakthrough came from Joan Curran, a Welsh physicist who realized that thin strips of aluminum foil, cut to half the radar wavelength, would reflect signals just like aircraft. Dropped in clouds, these window strips would create thousands of false echoes, overwhelming enemy radar. The concept was simple, elegant, and devastating. But it was withheld for over a year, as both sides had independently discovered the technique. Neither dared deploy it first, fearing retaliation. By mid-1943, however, British intelligence knew the Luftwaffe no longer posed a serious bombing threat to Britain. The decision was made. Operation Gomorrah, the firestorm raid on Hamburg, would unleash window for the first time. Factories across Britain produced millions of foil strips at breakneck speed. By July 1943, over 200 million were being made weekly. On the evening of July 24th, 791 bombers lifted off from airfields across England, each carrying crates of window. As the bomber stream crossed the German coast, radar operators like Hartmann watched their scopes erupt into chaos. The precision of the Würzburg was gone. The radar net collapsed under a blizzard of false returns. Fighter controllers shouted over radio channels, unable to find real aircraft amid the noise. Searchlights probed the sky at random. Flak gunners fired blindly, and the once-feared night fighters circled aimlessly. their Liechtenstein radars equally blinded. Meanwhile, the RAF's bombers flew unmolested to Hamburg. Losses dropped to just 1.5%, a fraction of the usual rate. Below, the city burned in a firestorm so intense it created its own hurricane of flame. Tens of thousands perished as the inferno consumed entire districts. The following morning, German technicians found the streets glittering with foil, millions of thin, metallic strips caught in trees, covering rooftops, and drifting through the canals. Within hours, Dr. Hans Plendl, Germany's chief radar scientist, confirmed the horrifying truth. The British had used Duppel, the exact same radar countermeasure German scientists had developed years earlier, but never deployed. Panic spread through the Luftwaffe's radar divisions. There was no immediate countermeasure. General Kammhuber realized at once that his once-perfect air defense network was obsolete. Germany had been beaten at its own game by simple aluminum strips. Desperation bred improvisation. Lacking effective radar, the Luftwaffe resorted to primitive visual tactics, wild sow or wild boar, sending single-seat day fighters to hunt bombers by sight over burning cities. It was dangerous and costly. Pilots died in accidents, collisions, and friendly fire. The Americans, meanwhile, accelerated their own countermeasure program. Harvard's Radio Research Lab developed Carpet, an active jammer that transmitted noise directly into German radar receivers. Instead of false echoes, Carpet produced pure static, drowning out signals completely. Crews reported watching with grim satisfaction as once accurate flak fire suddenly scattered wildly, firing into empty sky. Within months, Allied jamming had reduced German radar-directed flak accuracy by 75%. Loss rates from radar-guided guns plummeted, saving thousands of aircrew lives. Germany's response was frantic but futile. Scientists worked feverishly to develop filters that could separate falling chaff from fast-moving aircraft, or to build frequency-agile radars that could hop between channels faster than Allied jammers. The new Liechtenstein SN2 Garantotedunf Südstut had briefly restored some capability, operating on lower frequencies, immune to window interference. Night fighter ace Heinz Wolfgang Schnaufer credited it with saving lives and restoring kills. But the triumph was short-lived. In May 1943, a Ju-88 night fighter equipped with the earlier Liechtenstein radar defected to Scotland, giving British scientists everything they needed to design new jammers. A year later, another Ju-88 mistakenly landed in England, this time carrying the latest SN2 T2 radar intact. Within weeks, British engineers at TRE had developed Piperack, a countermeasure that blinded it completely. RAF 100 Group bombers began carrying specialized jamming aircraft, creating protective cones in the sky that made interception nearly impossible. By 1944, the electronic war was lost. Allied jammers blanketed the skies, while German radar operators sat helpless before screens filled with noise. The Luftwaffe diverted over 7,000 engineers, nearly every skilled radio and electronics expert in Germany, to develop countermeasures. Factories retooled repeatedly to produce new radar models that were obsolete before they reached the front. Anti-aircraft units consumed a quarter of Germany's total ammunition output, while over 1 million men stood beside guns made nearly useless by Allied jamming. Fighter squadrons once tasked with supporting ground troops were recalled to defend German cities they could no longer even detect. The psychological toll was immense. Hartmann wrote bitterly in his diary, "We adapt constantly, but the British adapt faster." By 1944, German radar crews felt they were fighting blind. Their enemy, unseen and untouchable, dominated an invisible battlefield. On D-Day, that mastery culminated in Operation Glimmer and Operation Taxable, deception operations that used radar-reflecting balloons and precise window drops to simulate phantom invasion fleets, drawing German defenses away from Normandy. When the real landings began, the German command was paralyzed by uncertainty. Their radar deceived beyond recovery. By war's end, Allied bombers routinely carried multiple jamming systems: Carpet, Piperack, and Mandrel. Over 14,000 Carpet units alone were built. Electronic warfare had evolved from an experimental concept into a decisive weapon. The post-war interrogations of German radar scientists revealed the scale of defeat. Dr. Plendl admitted, "After July 1943, every development we made was reactive. We were 6 months behind by the end of that year, a year behind by the next." General Kamhuber put it bluntly. The Kamhuber line died the night the British used window. Our radar became our weakness. The hunters became the hunted. For radar operators like Klaus Hartmann, who survived the war and later emigrated to America, that night was unforgettable. "When my screen filled with those impossible echoes," he said in a 1978 interview, "I knew everything had changed." The British had made their bombers invisible, not by hiding them, but by making us blind. In that moment, Germany lost the air war. The invisible war fought in the electromagnetic spectrum. Radar, jamming, deception proved as decisive as any fought with guns or bombs. It reshaped the future of warfare, proving that dominance in the unseen realms of science and signal could decide the fate of nations. On July 24, 1943, Germany's technological edge dissolved into static, and with it, its control of the skies. The most powerful air defense network ever built was defeated not by superior weapons, but by superior knowledge. Thin strips of foil that marked the beginning of modern electronic warfare and the end of Germany's radar supremacy forever.